The Hawaiian island is the most isolated landmass in the world. Because of this, natural immigration of species are not frequent. But Hawaii has the highest rate of endemism in the world, having 90% of their 1,000 native plant species be endemic. But on the other hand, native plants in lower elevation have been dominated by invasive plants. Because of this and other reasons, as of July 2016, there are 434 endangered species in Hawaii, which is a third of the amount of the U.S., making Hawaii the endangered species capital of the world.
It's a disruption to the ecosystem. Until man interferes, really nature knows what to do to make the right environment. Once you introduce the invasive species, it pushes out the native plants.
So a lot of these invasive species, the reason why they're invasive is because they don't have the biological controls that they maybe had in their native lands. So that means stuff like insects that maybe would have limited them, other types of factors. So what that means is they often grow much quicker than the native plants, and that's why they crowd out the native plants.
I conducted an ethnographic research model, and through volunteering at 808 cleanups, I was able to observe how the presence of invasive plants affects the native plants. Mike Lofton, Wade, and Fawn Livingood realized the amount of litter, illegal dumping, and pallet bonfire nails in the sand, so they decided to do something about it and created 808 Cleanups, the nonprofit organization, in 2014. 808 Cleanups' mission is to restore Hawaii's natural beauty through cleanups while educating and instilling values into their volunteers and the community. The first volunteer location was Honolulu Beach Park. Here we cut the stems of the invasive kiawe and transported them to a pile. The second volunteer location was Kaiwi Scenic Shoreline, where we cut the stems of the invasive halekoa. The last volunteer location was Kapapapuhi Point Park, where we picked up the invasive mangrove so that they wouldn't root into the ground.
The number one thing is our native, either native plants or the native wildlife goes away. And then it upsets the whole ecology of the island and it gets out of balance. And so it's so important that we get everything back to the way it was. So if we get the environment back to the way it was, it will bring the native species back, plants, wildlife and everything, and then the balance can be restored.
From a functionalist perspective, if we were to lose our native plants, it would be the same as losing our connection to the land, which in turn would mean our society would be losing the connection that we have to our history and our culture because of how the ancient Hawaiians used the native plants for clothes, medicine, and more. From a conflict theory standpoint, if humans hadn't introduced the alien and invasive species, then the native plants would have remained uninterrupted and without any competitors for resources. From an interactionist perspective, this problem has made people from all walks of life work together to preserve our native plants. Also, the people there educate the community on the native plants through oral tradition, which would promote culture. On a micro level, this affects me, because a few years ago I went to volunteer and I was standing knee-deep in the field. I looked around and saw invasive plants as far as I can see with only small patches of native plants. Once I saw that, it gave me the urge to help eradicate the invasive plants. On a meso level, invasive plants also affect the United States. Researcher Bethany Bradley did a research project where she found that the invasive plants in the US were only using up 50% of its max range for invading, meaning that the invasive plants are actually able to invade double the amount that they already do. On a macro level, invasive plants also affect different places in the world. In Kenya, the biodiversity has decreased, while in Ghana and Guam, their native plants have to compete for resources. In South Africa, they are showing efforts to remove the invasive plants due to their ability to access water. In conclusion, we have to stop these invasive plants so that our native plants won't become extinct. And this is a form of human ecology because without our native plants, there'll definitely be a different mood.